everybody. My name is Christine and I'm the owner of Visionary Holistic Solutions. Today's video we are going to be discussing shadow work, and we're going to be doing journal prompts that tie into each chakra. So we'll look at what helps balance each one and what can kind of make them become unregulated, and also what journal prompts we can look at to help get those situated. I hope that sounds good to you. Stay tuned. Okay, so let's get started with the root chakra. So what we're going to cover today is journal prompts. Mostly, we're going to look at what blocks it, how it can show up in your emotional and physical self, and what fears might be attached to it. So I'm just going to read through a couple of journal prompts. There are so many out there, and again, you can go do some research if you want to find more. I found hundreds probably that could be related to this. So these are just a few examples. So the first one is, how can I honor my body and its needs in order to feel more grounded and secure? So when you are doing these journal prompts, keep in mind that it's private information and hopefully nobody else is reading it. So with that, I want you to be 100% honest with your answers, okay? So sometimes when we have blockages in the chakra system, especially let's just say the throat, we can mislead ourselves, right? And we can believe everything's fine and we can believe there are no problems. So this series is honestly for those of us who are ready to do a deep dive within our inner selves and to speak honestly about our answers, okay? Dig deep and find your truth and how it resonates with you. And in doing this, what it's going to do is it's going to bring things up, okay? This is not an easy process. So as you are answering these questions and you are being honest in answering these questions, you are likely going to be digging up some emotional things, right? Maybe even past situations or trauma. And in doing so, it's okay if those feelings come rushing back to you. The whole idea behind shadow work is to process it out. So let's keep going. Which relationships or places make me feel unconditionally supported and secure? Okay, you can also do the reverse of that and ask yourself which ones do not honor that or make me feel unconditionally supported and secure. You can look at it again as, if this is not supporting me and I don't feel secure, why am I still in it? Okay, whether it is romantic, a family member, a friendship, whatever it is. If it is not unconditionally supporting you and you don't feel secure, you need to figure out why you're still there. Why do you still engage with those relationships? Okay, now if you are looking for the places and relationships that do make you feel secure, these are the ones you want to stick around for and hang on to. Because if you do feel supported, the interesting thing about this concept is it might be a foreign feeling, right? Maybe you didn't grow up with this unconditional love and supported and security feeling, right? So when someone comes along and offers that to you, maybe you're just totally unsure what to do with it and it feels foreign. And maybe you might even push it away because you're so uncertain about what it could be, right? Oh, this is so unfamiliar, I don't know what to do with it, okay? So in processing this out and figuring out why this is foreign to you, you can then heal that aspect of yourself and be more open and accepting to feelings like this. Okay, how have I been neglecting my own needs in order to provide for others? That is a big one. I'm going to tell you this. Probably 100% of the people out there should be asking themselves this question, right? These are the caregivers, and these are the people who don't do their own self-care and feel that they need to constantly be supporting everybody else but don't have the time for their own needs to be met, okay? So that is a trauma response to something. Maybe there wasn't care given to you growing up and you needed to be put in that position early on. I'll give you an example. Let's just say you were the oldest child, right? And your parents were gone working all the time or whatever they were gone for. And you were forced to be the babysitter, the cook, the chef, the nurse, whatever it was. You might have been put into that caregiver environment early on, and you didn't feel nurtured and cared for yourself. And again, most of us do this because we didn't receive this and now want to make sure that everybody else in our life is taken care of. But what that's leaving behind is you first, right? We always need to put our own needs first. It's like when you're on the airplane and they say put your own life vest on, then help someone else. If all of us are going around helping everybody else, by the time you get to you might be drowned. You're not saving yourself before you're saving other people. So again, something that needs to process out, to figure out why it is that you feel that you have to care for everybody else and that you are not important. Okay. Is there any part of me that feels unworthy or feeling safe, secure, and loved? All right. So again, some of the neglecting your own needs might come from a feeling of unworthiness. Maybe again, your caregivers growing up did not make you feel special in any way, or supported or loved even, I've heard so many people say that they did not feel safe in their house growing up. They did not feel loved, like there was no affection shown. And that is tough, because then how do you know how to do it to somebody else? And again, if it shows up in someone else, it may feel foreign. All right, last one here. How can I remind myself to stay grounded in moments of uncertainty or fear? This is a big one, because a lot of times what happens with our nervous system is when we are in moments of uncertainty or fear, our nervous system goes into fight or flight mode, okay? And it makes us feel that we're in danger. So it gets on guard constantly. And the majority of people out there, honestly, are in this mode 24/7, right? They haven't healed this aspect of feeling that it's okay to rest and digest, to be safe, to not have fear around situations, right? Or uncertainty. So your question here, and again, be honest with yourself, you could almost go back and probably find multiple situations where you felt uncertain and you felt fear, and you just need to process that out, okay? Once you process it out, you'll feel the feelings and you'll let it go. It's honestly as simple as that. Now, some people, again, don't want to look at this part and don't want to feel that pain again, that uncertainty, that fear. But it almost is like once you feel it and you let it go, you really don't have to deal with it again. Now, some pain, trauma, fears are deep-seated, and we have to heal them in layers, okay? So just know that it might take more than once, but it'll get easier every time, okay? So the karmic lesson that is tied to the root chakra is transcending fear of your needs not being met. Again, that really has a lot to do with your environment growing up, right? So if you had to step into the caregiver role and your needs were not met and you were just expected to be this person, your adult self didn't know how to adapt from having to be the caregiver for everybody else and transition it into, okay, now I'm done caring for everybody else. What about me? When is it time for me to look at my own needs and say that this should always come first? So when this chakra is blocked, this is how it can show up in the physical of your body. It can show up as lower back pain, pain in your legs and feet, or any lower extremities in general. So if you notice anything from lower back on down showing up as pain, this could be tied to your root chakra. Now, this might show up in your emotional body as low self-esteem, laziness, and fear or insecurity, okay? Now, your fear that could be tied to this would be fear of death, fear of not belonging, or weakness. So if any of these things resonate with you with the root chakra, then these are just different ways that you can help to look at it deeper, Figure out what it is that's causing, whether it's your physical pain, your emotional pain, blockages. But doing these journal prompts and doing them honestly will help you process out whatever it is that's holding you back from having a healthy root chakra. And again, how do we know if it's healthy? How do we know if it's balanced? Well, you feel safe. You feel secure in your environment. You're not worried. You're not fearful of, again, maybe where your next meal is coming from. When you come home, you don't feel that something is unsafe. And I'm getting this with possibly an abusive parent. That's how it could show up if you grew up with that. So maybe you came home and you just didn't know if it was going to be a bad day at the house, right? So now you're an adult and you're looking at this stuff and you're like, okay, I am safe, but your nervous system is uncertain still, right? It's still in that fight or flight mode. So these are all the things you can kind of do to help yourself through going into this deeply, processing out these old fears and these old, my needs are not being met, and now I'm going to deal with this as it is. And I am now safe, and it's going to take time, okay? So I all want you to be aware that as you are processing this out, what's going to happen is slowly over time, you are going to feel safe. You are going to feel secure, and you're going to feel provided for, because guess what? Now you don't need a caretaker to show up for you. You are your caretaker, and you're not worrying about taking care of everybody else. Now it's time for you, right? It's time for you to look at your own needs, your own self-care, and be that person that steps in and says, I got you. We're going to do this today because it's what we need. It's what we need to do. Taking a walk in nature is a good way to get grounded, to connect with nature, and to, again, just be with the earth, right? So the root chakra is about grounding. It's about connecting to the earth and realigning with our true natural self, feeling at home, right? We live on this earth, all of us do. And so when you feel like you belong here, it's just a beautiful feeling. Okay, we are going to jump into the sacral chakra now. So we're going to discuss some journal prompts and how this can show up in our emotional and physical body and fears attached to it. So there are plenty more of these. These are just a few examples related to your sacral chakra. So the first one that I have is reflect on what healthy sexuality means to you. This is a big one because, again, if you did not grow up, and I don't mean as a child, hopefully not as a child, but we do have to talk about it because it can occur. Let's think for your first relationship, right? Your first sexual relationship. What did it look like? What did it feel like? Did it feel good? Did it not feel good? Did it feel like you had to give up parts of yourself to satisfy someone else's needs? So what does healthy sexuality look like to you? If you don't know the answer to that, that's totally okay, because again, maybe some of us were not given good examples of this. But the point of journaling about it is to think on it, ponder what it might look like, even if we're unsure, and to go from there. It's really all you can do. You can also journal about what it is you know you don't want, okay? What are some bad examples of what this can look like, right? How do you not want to be treated? What kind of sexual relationships do you not want to have, okay? So you can take that a million different ways. But again, be honest with yourself. If something that you're doing is something that was shown to you early on in your relationships and you just don't enjoy doing it, but you think you're doing it because the other person that you're with might enjoy doing it, that is a whole thing in itself of you need to look at it and figure out why you're still doing the thing that you don't enjoy doing, right? It does not have to be a terrible situation to go into. And part of what we forget about is the vulnerable part, right? If we cannot be vulnerable with sexuality, then we're doing it wrong. Just want to throw that out there. So the next one I have is, what were you taught about self-gratification as a child? This is an interesting one because if you really think about it, were we taught anything most of us. I don't think so. But self-gratification is kind of your own reward system. That's the way I look at it, right? If you do something good for yourself, how do you celebrate? How do you gratify your own needs, your own self, your own accomplishments? Something interesting to look into because, again, I'm getting, for the most part, that a lot of us had not had great examples of this and didn't self-gratify, and also are wondering, what does that even look like? What am I supposed to do? How do I do this the right way? We don't all have the answers, and everybody's version is going to be different, likely. So the point of journaling about this is to look at it from an honest perspective and to say, okay, maybe I didn't know before how I self-gratified, but maybe now I have a better idea and I can look at this differently. Okay? That's all you're asked to do here. The next one I have is, what do I feel passionate about and how do I express my passion? So if you've ever felt, the word thwarted is coming to mind. Let's just say you did get super excited about something, right? Particularly as a kid, but even as an adult. You got excited about some topic or something to do or some place to go, and maybe you had naysayers around who said, that's stupid. Why are you interested in that? That's dumb. Whatever the thing is, okay? And so some of us have been made to feel that the things that we are passionate about should not be pursued. Or maybe we shouldn't be so passionate about these things. So the point of this question is to get back into that feeling of being passionate about something again, right? So if in the past you had something you were passionate about, journal about that. And maybe even ask yourself the question while you're doing this, did anyone ever come along and tell me that what I was doing was wrong, bad, stupid, inappropriate, whatever the situation is, okay? Because the things that we are passionate about mean something. And not everybody can understand that. So when they come along and they say, oh, why are you passionate about hopscotch? That's stupid. Well, maybe you just love hopscotch, So everybody's situations are going to be a little different. The next one is, what can I do in my daily life to add more opportunities for play? I love this because, again, it's taking me to, even as children, we were thwarted. That's the best word I can come up with for this. You're rolling down the hill and someone comes along and says, that's stupid, don't do that. You want to spin until you're dizzy and you throw up on a tire swing. That's the thing you're passionate about. That's what you want to do. But there's always somebody in the background lurking, it feels like. That's like, ugh, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that thing? I don't understand it. Therefore, I'm gonna call you out on it and tell you it's stupid. So in journaling about these things, what play activities are you excited about? So like building forts, building pillow and blanket forts would be something that if you did it as an adult, somebody's gonna come along and be like, are you a child? Why are you building pillow and blanket forts? But there's something inside of you that says, this is fun, and I enjoy doing this. So I'm just gonna do it and be happy and not care about what you say, whoever you naysayer are. So play can show up in many different ways, okay? Think to yourself, what does play mean to you? And how can you incorporate it more in your daily life? And then I have, reflect on this statement and what it means to you. Play is not irresponsible. Creativity is not impractical. And fun is not frivolous. Again, these feel like almost opposing views to somebody who would have came along and thwarted your ideas, right? Oh, you're playing, that's irresponsible. Oh, you have creativity, that's impractical. And you're having fun, that's frivolous, So I sound like a very stuffy person saying this kind of stuff, but that's really what it feels like, okay? Somebody who is just like a stick in the mud, who doesn't have fun and doesn't see the bright side of things, right? Maybe a pessimist is going to come along and tell you that some of the stuff that you enjoy doing is these things, right? I'm not going to keep repeating it because I want you guys and girls and whoever's listening to go out there and play and have creative energy and to have fun, because fun is creative energy, right? So the karmic lesson for this chakra is let go of guilt and shame and live life with passion. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. So maybe these phrases have led you to feel guilty or shameful for wanting to be creative, to be sexual, to be passionate, to be fun. It's just not the case, right? We are allowed to incorporate all of these things into our lives now, and it is safe to do so. It's the biggest thing you can tell yourself, right? Nobody's going to come along and sneak up behind you and tell you shouldn't or you can't. But they might still. You're just going to be like, yeah, whatever. I don't have to listen to you. It's my life, right? So if you have this chakra blocked, this is how it can show up in your physical body. In women, it could be a painful period because it is in that lower abdomen area. It can show up as infertility and constipation. In your emotional body, it can show up as jealousy, low self-esteem, and depression. Now, let's go back to those people that are coming along thwarting you. These are the emotions they are likely feeling and therefore trying to push it on you, trying to project their jealousy, their low self-esteem, and their depression onto you by making you feel the way they feel about having fun, about being creative and play and having passion for something. It's something they possibly cannot fathom, and so therefore they feel like you shouldn't be doing it either. All right, so just be aware of that. This will show up in fear as being too sensitive or being fearful of being too sensitive, a fear to show your authentic self, or a loss of creativity. Okay, so let's just say, yep, I feel like I'm too sensitive. Maybe somebody came along and said, yep, you're too sensitive. So now you're just believing that. Being afraid to show your true self. Maybe you once showed your true self, or a bunch of times did. And again, you get these jealous, low self-esteem people who are like, yeah, I don't like that authentic self. Or I think that it's stupid, whatever. So it makes you feel like you want to hide it. And then that makes you lose your creativity. Sadly, that is kind of the reaction, right? If everybody else doesn't like the thing you're doing, it makes you not want to do it anymore. All right. So when this chakra is balanced, when we're in a good place with it, we do feel passionate. We do feel creative. We are also optimistic and open. And it is a beautiful thing. So, our sacral chakras. It is just a beautiful place to be creative from, right? And I strongly believe that our sexual energy helps propel our passion and our creativity. And if you are not in tune with that and you are out of balance or you have it blocked, again, it's going to result in being a loss of creativeness, right? And afraid to show your true self. So that is the sacral chakra in a nutshell. Okay, let's talk about the solar plexus chakra now. So again, we're going to go into different journal prompts you can do, what to be able to tell if it's blocked, fears around it, and how it shows up in your physical and emotional body. So the first journal prompt that I have for you is, when do I feel most confident? And when do I feel least confident? So the solar plexus, I take this is our courage, our strength. And again, confidence goes along with that as well. So if you ever feel like you're in a situation and your gut is rumbling or, trying to tell you not to do something or to do something, maybe like the word coward is coming up. So that would kind of be if you're blocked, you're afraid to do something, right? You almost have to muster up that confidence to go forward and to do the thing that you're trying to do. So if there is a particular time when you feel most or least confident, maybe it's around a certain person, or it could be a group of people, right? There are definitely groups of people that can make us feel more confident, or less confident? So again, journal about that and be honest with yourself. Then the next one I have is, what is my source of confidence? So again, it doesn't have to come from people, right? We don't need to rely on other people to make us feel confident, because that's a form of external validation, which we should not be utilizing. It should be coming from within somehow. So if the sunshine is your source of confidence, journal about that. If it is creativity, if it is doing certain activities, going to certain places, maybe it's a job that you have that makes you feel more confident. You know, if you're doing something, you're saying something, you're acting some way, whatever the situation is that is your source of confidence, right? Maybe it's a good night's sleep. It could really be anything. So the next one is, what does it mean to me to have self-respect? And how can I feel more self-respect in my daily life? Okay, so self-respect to me shows up in the way of boundaries. So self-respect is the respect you have for yourself, right? So if you just kind of are a pushover and you allow people to just do what they want, and even if it's not necessarily something you want to do, you're trying to figure out how to set a boundary in place. Maybe it could be a relationship that you have always just let them do what they're going to do and didn't step up for yourself and say, look, I have self-respect. I'm going to put this boundary in place and I'm not going to allow this to happen. So what is the definition to you of self-respect, and how can you put more of that into your daily life, right? The next one I have is, what does personal power mean to me? Okay. So again, we're talking about self-respect. We're talking about confidence. What does personal power mean to you? How can you put that into a definition? And not only that, but how can you muster it up when you need it to come about, right? Let's say you're in a situation where you're like, oh man, I have no personal power. I feel like I just can't get control of this situation. I'm not sure what to do. How do you muster up the courage and the personal power to get through something, especially something difficult? And the next one I have is, what are 3 things that I love about myself? This is not often something that we think about on a regular basis, right? We oftentimes more worry about what somebody else might love about us. Right? Why are you with me in this relationship? What do you love about me? But we should first be looking in the mirror and saying, hey, what do I love about myself? All right, the karmic lesson that goes along with this chakra is foster a stable sense of self-worth and personal integrity. I love that because, again, a lot of worthiness stuff happens out there when we overgive. When we don't set boundaries, we just kind of let people do what they're going to do. And then having personal integrity is about having your own moral compass about stuff, right? It doesn't mean that you follow a particular religion and you follow that moral compass of what those people believe, but you have your own personal integrity. What am I willing to do, and what am I absolutely not willing to do? And then to stand up for yourself and to say, I'm not willing to do that. Right? It's like Meatloaf. I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that. So you've got to step in and say, this is my personal integrity boundary. I'm cutting it off here and I'm not allowing you to go any further. So if this chakra is blocked, it will show up in your physical as poor digestion, ulcers, and asthma. It can show up in your emotional body as codependency, lack of self-control, and addiction. So codependency, that is when you heavily rely on others for anything, for your sense of worth, for your sense of happiness. So again, the external validation that we were talking about. So if you are codependent on somebody, you may rely on them for everything, right? For love, for care, for money, for support, for happiness. But the thing is if we can't get that for ourselves, then our value is lowered, because you're basically allowing someone else or other people to dictate that for you. So that's where we have to set that boundary, find our self-worth. What are we worth? What is our time worth? What is our energy worth? And not being codependent on someone else to tell us that, right? This can show up as our fears for this one. A fear of lack, which is not having enough. So again, you don't know where your next meal is going to come from. You don't know where money's going to come from. You just don't have enough of whatever. It could be supplies. It could be love, right? An intolerance to aggressive people. This is interesting. We also have fear of not making the right decision. Do you know anybody that can't make decisions easily? Like, let's go to restaurants, for example, right? I've got friends where we'll just sit there for 5, 10, 15 minutes looking at the menu over and over again. And I'm like, do you know what you want yet? And they're like, no, I can't decide. Some people have such a fear of making the wrong decision that they fail to make a decision altogether and are totally fine with that codependency and allowing someone else to make that decision for them. But again, in doing that, you're not exerting your own personal power and your own integrity because you're not standing up for something, right? The saying goes, if you don't stand up for something, you'll fall for anything. That is this chakra. That is what that saying goes for. So if you do have a balanced solar plexus chakra, you are confident. You have your sense of personal power and you have a good self-image. Okay? So you've already looked in the mirror and you say, here's 3 things I love about myself. In fact, here's a list of 100. I'm a pretty great person and I'm confident when I walk into the room. I know what my personal power is and I use it to my benefit and to my advantage. I set boundaries with people. I feel safe that if I do interact with somebody that I'm able to step back and say, nope, that ain't for me, right? I can exert confidence and courage in situations where potentially I don't feel like it's safe or secure. So it could be like a scary situation. Maybe you've never done something before and now you're like, oh boy, I've got to muster up all my courage and confidence to be able to move forward with this. So that's basically how I look at the solar plexus chakra. So hopefully that helps for you guys. Thank you. All right, let's talk about the heart chakra. So we're going to go into, again, journal prompts for this one. We're going to go into fears. We're going to go into what blocks it physically, emotionally, and how to tell whether we're balanced or not. So the first one we have is, what does unconditional love feel like to me? Let's think about that for a second. Has anyone experienced unconditional love? Do you really know what that feeling feels like? Or were you raised to feel that you had to earn your love? Like, if you do this for me, then I'll love you more, kind of thing is what I'm coming up with there. So I'm feeling that like a grandparent would more likely give you the unconditional love that you may have felt. Parents sometimes can give you that too. But I've seen it both ways. So if you feel that you just were loved unconditionally and it didn't matter how bad you behaved or anything that you did made any difference to the level of love that you received, then that is unconditional love, right? So journaling about that, you can go the reverse too. So what does it feel like to me, but also what does it not feel like? When does it not feel like it's unconditional? Like there are conditions attached to it, right? So the next one is, how can I incorporate more love, empathy, and self-acceptance into my routine? So if you think about love and empathy and self-acceptance, what does that mean to you? First of all, we can go there. And then how can we incorporate more of that into our routine? So empathy is when you feel something for someone else, right? Somebody else is going through a hard time. You're sitting there with them and you're like, I empathize with your situation. Self-acceptance means I accept myself as I am in this moment. Doesn't matter my weight, doesn't matter my age, my status, how much money I make, my job, whatever you may judge your situation on with self-acceptance, right? Some people say, oh, if I lose 10 more pounds, then I'll accept myself. Or if I get a nose job, I'll accept myself. Or whatever, if I get into a relationship, I'll accept myself. There's so many conditions we put on our own self, and believe it or not, other people put those conditions on us too. So be more compassionate with your own self and with others, because everybody's going through something. It's kind of the way I think about it. The next one is, how was love expressed in your family as a child? Big question there. So, again, we went to the unconditional love. How did it feel? Did it feel like you had to do something to gain the love of your family? Or did it feel like no matter what, you could come home every day, you could get terrible grades, you could not clean your room, and you'd still be loved the same no matter what? So, look at how your family dynamic has shaped your view of love. And not just love, but conditional love versus unconditional love. Because that is the starting point of how we build healthy, loving relationships as an adult. What did we receive as a child? What did we receive in any of the relationships that we had beyond that, right? These all mold who we think we are and how we approach the subject of love. The next one is, do you feel worthy of love? Why or why not? So again, kind of tying back to the conditions thing, maybe somebody made you feel once upon a time that you were not worthy of love. Okay? That conditional thing came into play, and if you didn't offer whatever it was that they wanted, usually for their own selfish needs or wants, then they made you feel that you didn't deserve it at all. So that's a very deep question to ask yourself. If you feel worthy of love, answer why or why not. Okay? The next one I have is, explore a moment in life when you've felt overwhelming love. Have any of you truly felt that feeling? I'm going to tell you mine, because I didn't have it with any real person on this plane. When I felt it was when I got an angelic hug or an ancestral hug. It comes in as energy, and you feel it wrapping around you, and it just envelops you, and it's actually so intense that like your human self can't take it. It can't handle it because it is overwhelming. So if you've never experienced that, then you likely have no idea what I'm talking about, and that's okay. But if you ever have felt that feeling, journal about it and ask for more of that. That's what I can say about that topic. So your karmic lesson here is to forgive yourself and others and let love flow freely. All right. Forgiveness is the biggest thing with the heart chakra. This is what blocks so much love out there. I can't even begin to tell you how important forgiveness is. Because what happens is we might get into some situation, we might be treated badly, and again, maybe conditions were put on previous love situations, and then we don't forgive them. Maybe we don't forgive ourselves, so we can't get past it. And what that's doing is that is blocking your heart chakra and enabling you, I should say, disengaging your love, right? We can't express truly how we feel, and we can't ever feel that overwhelming love. We just don't know what it feels like, because that forgiveness is just waiting to happen to release whatever it is that's been holding you back from moving forward and diving into love again, right? So when it's blocked in your physical body, it will show up as heart disease and high blood pressure. Okay, high blood pressure is the number one effective disease in the United States. That has not changed for a long time. Think about that. It's like one of the number one causes of death, where the person could have done something to affect their blood pressure, and it is tied to your heart chakra. Interesting fact, right? It shows up in your emotional body as lack of empathy and fear of intimacy. That is pretty self-explanatory, right? If you do not like being vulnerable with people and you don't have empathy for other people and their situations, this is a blocked heart chakra. So the fear that's tied to this one is you have a fear of love. Again, I'm getting more that it's like a fear of being hurt in love. not just the love itself, but the hurt that comes along with it. Then we have the fear of giving and being betrayed. Yep, again, this is past stuff. So it's almost like we were betrayed once, right? And maybe we gave too much in a relationship and it backfired. Maybe they were tied to the conditions, and now we feel that it's hard to open our heart back up again because we feel that everybody's going to betray us that way, or they're not going to return our love, right? That's the unrequited love situation. It's also a fear of uncontrolled self-criticism. So if you constantly put yourself down, that in itself is the uncontrolled self-criticism. And when it comes up as the word uncontrolled, it's like it's all you think about. It's like negative self-talk, right? So you can't look in the mirror and think of 5 reasons you love yourself. You can't look in the mirror and say, I'm proud to be who I am and I love myself unconditionally. There's something in the way that needs to be cleared out of that. So when this chakra is balanced, you feel peaceful, loving, and tolerant. Again, tolerant. Are we tolerating things, or are we just completely intolerable of everything? Like, oh no, I can't deal with that. So if you can go out and you can peacefully love anybody for whatever reason, you don't even need a reason, right? I love you, man. It's like Wayne's World. He just says, I love you, man, to everybody. And then the guy finally responds to, I love you too. We're normalizing guys saying, I love you to each other. We're normalizing anybody, any random person saying, I love you to each other. Friendships, romantic relationships, moms and dads, kids, cousins, aunts, uncles, whoever, right? It's okay to express the love. And if it's not reciprocated, you shouldn't thwart your own expression of love, right? Just move on to somebody else who appreciates it more. It is what it is. Okay, let's talk about the throat chakra. So again, we're going to get into journal prompts, fears around this one, if it's blocked, and how it shows up in your physical and emotional body. So the first one that I have is, how do you express yourself best? So think about that. If you express yourself at all, when is the time when you feel the most confident in expressing yourself? This can also show up in the styles that you express. So is it through writing? Is it through talking, verbal communication? Is it through art, music? So journal about what style you prefer to communicate in. I definitely know people that find it easier to sit behind a keyboard and to not talk and just type their messages or text their messages, so think about that. You could also ask yourself why. Maybe you prefer behind the keyboard because it's less confrontational and you don't like to use your voice in real life activities. So the next one I have is, when you were growing up, how did your family express themselves? And was it healthy? That is a big question, because that is shaping your views on communication and how you communicate. Because you are taught from a baby how to talk, right? We're going to say our first words. What are our first words? And then you're going to start to learn how to put words together into phrases, and you're learning by example. So you're learning from school because you're learning from the kids at school, the teachers at school. You're learning from your family. So this is your immediate family. And then it's also your extended family. How did everybody communicate to each other? Was it loving? Was it compassionate? Or was it mean and obnoxious and tearing each other down? These things all shape the way in how we communicate as adults. Then you can even go in and say, okay, if I'm still communicating in a way I do not prefer because I was raised that way, then you can question, what can I do to change that? How can I make my communication different? All right, the next one I have is, who is your favorite person to talk to and why? This makes a huge difference, right? Because we all have people that we prefer to go to when we need to talk something out. Ask yourself why you go to these particular people when you need to talk about something. Are they compassionate when they're listening to you? Do they not tear you down while you're talking? Do they not judge you of the things that you need to bring to them? So there's a lot of reasons that we have specific people in our lives that we prefer to talk to about certain things. Then you could even go on the flip side and say, who is a person that I prefer not to go and talk to? Who do I not enjoy having conversations with? Again, it could be somebody who is more judgmental, who already, the answer is going to be something, to sway you away from something that you really enjoy doing, or some way that thwarts, again, your voice so that you don't express how you feel. The next one I have is make a list of negative phrases that you say often, and how can you turn those into positives? So again, let's talk about negative self-talk. It doesn't always have to be things that we say negatively about ourselves. Maybe we engage in gossip. Maybe we talk about certain types of people, right? I don't agree with that political group. I don't agree with that religious group. You start to say, I not like negative things, right? But the interesting thing about how universal laws work, it does not recognize the word not and don't. So whatever you're saying, again, I don't believe in that religion, right? The more you talk about it, the more you're giving it power. And that is such a strange concept because, again, maybe we grew up thinking that that's not how this works. We don't understand the universal laws. Doesn't matter what we say about the thing we're talking about, we are breathing life into it. We are giving it power just by speaking of it. So by giving it your attention, you're buying into it, whatever it is, even if you're speaking negative about it. So when we're thinking of these negative phrases that you might often say, you can turn them around and change them into positives. You could even omit things that you don't like altogether and start to think, what do you like, right? You're going to start to attract the things that you talk about and think about a lot. That's how the universal laws work. So let's change the script and stop talking about the negative things that we don't want in our life and start thinking about the positive things in our life that we do want and start speaking on those. And you'll actually start to see those things manifest in your life. So the next one I have is, how do you use your voice in any situation? Do you speak up or do you remain silent, meaning you hold things in? Your voice is your power. That is a very powerful thing that growing up we may have been led to believe is not worth anything or that we shouldn't use, right? They say like words hurt, and that's absolutely true. So if you use your voice from a place of power and you speak out against things that you think are wrong or injustice, you go for the underdog. That would be a way to use your voice as your power. But again, if you remain silent, you're almost doing the opposite thing in being complacent with some kind of situation. So, very powerful thing to journal about with your voice, because again, your voice is definitely your power. Your karmic lesson here is to speak your truth without guilt or conflict. So, let's talk about that. Some people, to avoid conflict, will not speak up about something, right? And I am guessing wholeheartedly that many of you experienced that within your family dynamic. People held things in. They did not talk about things because they always felt that if they did bring something up, that it would cause conflict and that caused you to be wrong in some way. And again, maybe guilt was attached to it. So, your lesson is to speak your truth and to let it flow out, all right? Do it without guilt or conflict. And again, this also is taking me to the way we can express ourselves. There is a way to be compassionate when we express something that maybe we think the other person is not going to like what we have to say, right? So have compassion with the way that you express your voice, because it can be used as a weapon, but it can also be used as a source of freedom. So the way that this can show up blocked in your physical self is thyroid problems, a sore throat, or a literal lump in your throat. Have you ever tried to swallow and it just feels like right about here there is a literal lump in your throat? That is a blocked throat chakra. That is your body trying to tell you that there's something that you need to say in some situation and you're holding it in. You're not using your voice as your power. The way that it will show up in your emotional body is you can't express your feelings. Your heart and your mind are disconnected. So think about where your mind and your heart are located. Your throat's right in between. It's like fighting for, the balance between the two. So if this is blocked, it's because your mind and your heart are not on the same page, right? They're thrown at different dartboards. So the fear around this chakra is fear of showing your creativity to the world. So it's not about showing it to friends or family. Like maybe the world needs to see it and you're like, yeah, I don't want to express myself. This could come across as unexpressed feelings, emotions, or the fear of self-expression, right? I'm afraid to express myself. I'm afraid to dress how I want to dress because maybe growing up that wasn't the accepted way to do things. If this throat chakra is balanced, you are confident, you are a clear communicator, and you are creative. So, again, think about the many ways that you use your voice as your power. And on the flip side, think about when you have felt silenced by your voice. When have you felt that you weren't allowed to express something? And think about why now you're choosing to want to express it. Like it feels like there's a change in the wind and now all of a sudden, yep, I was silenced before, but I can no longer be silenced. Let's talk about the third eye chakra. So again, we'll get into the blocks, the physical and the emotional, how it shows up as being balanced, journal prompts, and fears around this. So the first one that I have is, was imagination encouraged or discouraged while growing up? This is very important because, again, it goes back to childhood and it goes back to trusting imagination and using it. So if there was ever a point in time where you wanted to be imaginative, in drawing, in art, kind of is more what I'm thinking this is towards, but for whatever reason you were either swayed away from it or, again, maybe told that it was stupid or whatever else, it showed up as, this would be a good way to journal about that and to find out kind of the root as to why, the shadow aspects of your third eye. So the next one I have is, what are some past experiences where my intuition led me to make the right choice? I love this one because it's tapping into your intuition and it's asking you to go back and think of probably how many times you have made the right decision because you trusted your gut instincts, your intuition, right? Let's think about a traffic jam. Maybe something told you not to take this way today, but you always take this way. And then you diverted and you ended up avoiding a huge delay. So there's been many examples in your life that you can probably think of where you were led to do something different than you would normally do. And you trusted that and it worked out to your benefit. There's so many times where, again, we might have told somebody this and they're like, oh, that doesn't mean anything. It's just a coincidence. So the hardest part to get through this is to realize that coincidences, I don't believe in coincidences. They always mean something. So if you're going through and you're trying to think of the times that you trusted your intuition and it ended up panning out for you, maybe it was lottery ticket numbers, something like that. You trusted your intuition, you went through something, and it turned out to be to your benefit. So think of those. And then you can also even journal about the people who tried to convince you that you're not intuitive or that you didn't trust your intuition. It was just chance, coincidence that stuff like that happened, So the next one I have is, what are some daily practices that I can use to help cultivate my intuition? So there are lots of practice things you can do to try to cultivate it. So one of the best ways that I read up on how to do this And there's multiple ways. So this is not the be all end all. But get yourself a deck of cards. And what you're going to do is put them all face down, shuffle them. And you're going to close your eyes before you draw each card and try to picture a red light and a green light. And if you ask your intuition the question, is the card red? It'll either give you the red light or the green light. And track how often you're correct versus incorrect. Now, when you first begin doing this exercise, you may be incorrect. You got about, 50-50 chance of being correct versus incorrect. That's kind of the standard practice on what the statistics would look like. But over time, maybe you'll learn to trust the red light, green light, and you'll do better, right? Now, you may do worse before you do better. The whole point of this practice is to trust your intuition and to say, is the card red? And then give me the red or the green light. And if it's red light, meaning, nope, it's not red, the next card should flip to be black. Keep track of it. Keep like a little tally sheet. And also try to do this once a day for at least a week. You could do it more frequently. You can do it over a longer period of time. But this is just a very basic strategy on how to tap into your intuition and to trust it and to see if it works. So the next one is, in what ways do you mistrust your intuition? Okay, that is also a fair question. So I'm getting that with more of us that would mistrust our intuition, there was a reason we don't trust it, right? Maybe you went and did something because you thought it was the thing that you were supposed to do or whatever, and it failed you. Maybe it turned out to be a terrible situation. And so now you're like, can I even trust my inner compass? Is it even correct? Can I even use it to my advantage? So there's lots of books out there that you can read to help sharpen it. Okay, again, using your dream state and meditative state to see things, to visualize things. There's other ways to try to tap into it. So again, the card trick is kind of the very basic thing. And if you're looking for more advanced stuff, again, there's plenty of information out there. And then the last one is, what is your strongest intuitive gift or sense? So for many of us, we might have more than one, right? Are you clairaudient, meaning you can hear things? So you might hear a person's voice come in and tell you something. You might be claircognizant, which just means a thought comes to you. You just know the information. You may not know the source of the information. It just is in there somewhere and you're just scraping it out of nowhere and you're like, yep, I know that knowledge already. So anyways, there's a lot of different clairs out there, and you may have a couple that function really well for you. Maybe you have none yet. But a lot of what the practicing is it's trying to kind of train your intuition to function with it and to work with it. All right, the karmic lesson for the third eye is to see beyond appearances and illusions. So the way I read this is, things are not always what they seem, right? It's taken me to the Wizard of Oz, the man behind the curtain. Things are not always what they seem. And sometimes people show up with a mask on and they may lead you to believe something, but then again, the wolf in sheep's clothing comes out. So illusions. There are plenty of illusions in our world. Plenty, right? Let's think of advertising. How many times have you bought a product because the advertising told you it was promised and guaranteed to work on whatever the thing was that was supposed to work? You bought it, you spent the money, and so did millions of other people. You got it, it was a piece of junk. That is illusion. And it's also their way of trying to mask, again, what that product may or may not do. And it's helping to teach you what to trust and what to believe and what not to trust and believe. So if you go into situations and you just get a bad feeling about it, trust that. That is your intuition trying to send you your spidey senses to say, hey, maybe you should not go into that haunted house. You know, something terrible is going to happen. The ceiling's going to fall in on you, or whatever. Again, don't go that way to work today because there's a really bad accident and you didn't check Google Maps first. So whatever it is, learn to trust your intuition more. When this shows up in a blocked physical sense, you will notice headaches, depression, and potentially a hormonal imbalance. When it shows up in emotional, it could be poor intuition or you don't trust your intuition. So again, there have probably been times where you're like, man, I trusted my intuition and it led me astray, so now I can never trust it again. So you almost have to work with it, okay? Kind of like your eyesight. You have to work with it to see things and to trust what it is you're seeing. Your intuitive eye is located right here, and it actually has an optical nerve connected to it. So it is another way of seeing and then having to also trust whatever it is that you're seeing. So the fear attached to this one is fear to trust your heart. You're stuck in an emotional and intellectual rut. Interesting way of putting it. Now, if this one is balanced, you will be intuitive, you'll have clear thoughts and vision, and you'll also be imaginative. So when you're journaling, think back of times when your intuition led you to something good and you trusted it and it worked out well, or in the reverse, times when you trusted it and you feel that it didn't work out to your best advantage. Some of that might be tied to, I keep going to like someone else leading that for you. So this could be like ancestral trauma tied to it. Like, oh, I was always told to trust this road because it's always safe, and so I always take that road. Even if that morning my intuition led me to go some other way, I still went that way. Maybe you have this inner feeling that you trusted the intuition, but it was really not the intuition you were trusting. So journal about that, be honest with yourself, and see where it takes you. Last but not least, the crown chakra. So just as all the ones that came before, journal prompts. We're going to talk about fears around this, the karmic lessons, and how it shows up in the physical and emotional body. So the first one I have is, what does it mean to surrender? So I associate the crown chakra as those of us who feel that we need to exert control in our life and can't surrender to just the flow of life. So do you know what it means to truly surrender, to give in, to say this is not in my control and that I am going to allow the universe to take me where I need to go? The next one is, describe the connection that you feel to the world, other people, plants, animals, and the universe as a whole. I love this because it's speaking of connection, right? How many times have you felt connected to other people, to the world, to plants, to animals? Do you feel the connection at all? If you don't, it's just something to journal about. If you meet an animal, does there feel like there is a connection there? Especially if it's your own animal. Most people say that animals are family. But if you're out in nature and you're looking at plants, do you feel a connection to the plants? Do you feel a connection to the universe, like that you are one with everything that exists? Definitely something to ask yourself, because if you do feel disconnected, that's part of the blockage. We'll get into that. The next one is, what part of your current belief system struggles to trust and to believe, and why? So what part of you and your belief system that you currently have within yourself has you struggling to trust? It's a deep question, because there probably are many things that likely brought you to this place of not being able to trust people, places, things, whatever, situations, organizations, even religions, politicians. The list could go on and on and on. How many times have you been betrayed in your life? How many times have somebody dropped the ball on your trust? You gave them all your trust and they led you astray and didn't tell you basically that you could be trusted back. All right. The next one is, how can I connect with my highest self in daily life? This is a valid question. I've actually had people not understand what their higher self is. So let's talk about it. I think of your higher self as your soul, your core frequency. It is you at your most authentic and truest self. So, how can you connect with that version of you? Sometimes you can call in your highest self when you need assistance with something, like you cannot handle something in your everyday life. So you can say, I'm calling in my highest self. Here, take this for me. I need help with it, or whatever the situation is. I look at it as if you had your best version of you. That's your highest self. And this is oftentimes who me, myself personally, and potentially the rest of you, communicate with other people. So you know how people often say, I see the best in them, right? Or I see the best version of them. I see what they can be. That is you connecting with someone's highest self. Believe it or not, that is what you are connecting with. Now, there may be a detachment in people's highest self from their physical three-dimensional self, which is where things don't appear to be the same, right? So if people go into a relationship and see, I see who they can be, but their three-dimensional self is not showing up that way, that can be a difficult thing to accept, because you might have been communicating on a fifth dimensional level who that person's soul is and what their frequency is at a soul level. So don't get stuck in that trap, all right? We can communicate with people's higher selves just as well as we can communicate with our own higher selves. But that doesn't mean that in this lifetime they will actually become that, okay? So don't fall into that trap. The next one is, who is my highest self and how does that show up in the world? All right. So what is your highest self meant to do in this world? How do you see your higher self interacting with everyday activities that you perform? That is what I like to consider my divine purpose. So if your soul is trying to lead you towards something, trust that, because your soul already knows the way, your higher self. So it's just trying to have you follow the path that you're meant to go on, right? And if you resist it, again, that goes back to the surrendering thing. That's you trying to exert control over your life when your soul's like, nope, we already know the way. We're trying to get you to go do this other thing. Surrender to it and give up the control. And I know that is a difficult thing to do. So the karmic lesson for this is let go of ego and discover your divine purpose. There it is. So if any of you are leading through your ego, it just means, it's difficult to describe. Again, exerting control. This could mean exerting not only control over your own life, but trying to exert control over others, like free will. I'm going to tell you what to do. I am going to make you do this. My ego's in charge. So they can be very, your divine purpose. What does that mean? Your soul already knows what your divine purpose is. It's different for everybody. So I personally cannot tell you whatever your divine purpose is. My soul's leading me towards mine, and yours is leading you towards yours. Again, trust that. So how does this show up in your physical body? Poor sleep habits. Easy explanation for that. I kind of adapt this as your mind can't shut down at the end of the night. All right, overthinking could be a potential for this. Your brain's too active. You haven't properly been able to shut it down to actually sleep, right? So if you're overthinking about things throughout the day, problems that you have in your life, again, unable to surrender control. It shows up in the emotional body as difficulty in meditating and feeling disconnected from your body. How interesting is that? So again, overactive mind. It really does go back to that. If you cannot sit down for even 1 minute and meditate, you need 20 minutes to meditate. I think that's an old proverb. I forget who says it, but you're the one that needs it the most. So spend more time. But there is videos out there of 1 minute long meditation. Hey, if you can do it for 1 minute, then you can do it for 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, and so on and so forth. But it's all about surrendering and shutting your mind down enough to be able to just chill out for a few minutes, The fears attached to this is the fear of spiritual guidance, Maybe you've been misled in the past. Spiritual guidance, that can mean so many things to so many people. Some people associate that with religion. Maybe they joined a cult and they were led to drink the Kool-Aid and then they felt stupid afterwards. That's very valid. Feeling of being lost and incomplete. Again, very valid. If you don't feel that you are of this world and that you belong somewhere else and that you are missing parts and pieces of yourself, maybe it's time to call the factory and surrender. I'm making light of this, but it's, it is what it is. It's one of those things where we're going along in our life. We don't always know what it is we're looking for or what makes us complete or incomplete or how to surrender. But we learn as we go, right? Growth is the basis for everything. When this chakra is balanced, we feel universal love, again, just a connection to everything. We feel intelligent and wise. So next time you go for a walk in nature, try to see if you can feel that connection to the plants, to the animals out there, to the birds chirping. Just see if you feel that universal love.